Well, hello and welcome to Dr. Childress Answers Your Questions. In this series of videos, I will be answering people's questions, whatever questions they may have related to the pathology in the family courts, related to anything actually. Um, in this particular segment, though, I'll be answering a question I received from a parent of Dr. Childress. Is it okay to give up? And that's a legitimate question in many cases. Uh, the parents who are experiencing that feeling of is it okay to give up? When should I give up? Um, kind of experience. There's a truth to that experience that you're responding to. The challenge is that there's also a false place that's involved. It has to do with the attribution of why you feel that way. The experience of wanting to give up or feeling that you should give up, even, um, is an authentic feeling, but the attribution of why it's there is a little um, distorted. So let's talk about that in a second about why you would be feeling that desire or need or just exhaustion, that feeling of wanting to give up. And to begin with, there's two systems involved. We have our emotion system and our thinking system, and they're entirely different systems with entirely different roles. The emotion system provides value weightings to our various decisions and our courses of action and our motivations. So it provides whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, how good, how bad, those sorts of things. Our thinking systems, our cognitive systems, work out the details. Now, if you give a cognitive system a, uh, a decision, what it's likely to do is create lists of all the good things and all the bad things and then compare and see how many good things there are compared to how many bad things are. But that's not how we make decisions, and that's not how motivations work. We actually turn to our emotional system and say, what's important here? Give me valuations of what's important and what's not so important of all these various options and things. And that's where it gets a little fuzzy, is over in the value of the various things. We can value loyalty, we can value truth, but sometimes those two may not go together in particular ways. And so it's in the emotion system that it's difficult. Now, so the emotion systems are designed to provide value. The thinking systems are designed to work out the details. So, uh, for the emotions, that's the emotional feelings are a desire to escape, a desire to surrender, and a desire for release. Those are the emotions involved with that motivation to give up or that thought to give up. Should I just give up? I want to escape the situation. There's a surrender to the inevitable and to the hopeless, and a release from the current situation and the traumas that are going on. Now, the thinking system, what that's role in this is linear logical reasoning, foresight and planning ahead, and self-reflective insight. That's what the reasoning system or the thinking system does. So now the emotions set our course in life, whereas the thinking systems work out the details. And so that's important to understand here about how our emotions and thinking kind of work out, because our emotions are giving us the values of what's important, what's not. But it's giving us basic ballpark, it's like this is good somewhere, and somehow this is bad somewhere, and somehow. But the emotions aren't really worried about what's out there. That's up to the thinking systems to work out. And so the emotions give general basic information to our motivations, to our thinking. Then the thinking systems figure out why and what's going on, and how to correct the situation. So things get a little messed up when we reverse those kind of roles. When we let our thinking system develop our life course and we wind up being an artist who's an attorney. It's like, whoa, you didn't follow your dream. You didn't follow what you wanted to do in life. Or when we let our emotions work out the details, that'll get us into trouble too, because they're just not very good at kind of detail oriented stuff, or thinking about things and anticipating consequences of actions. That's more our thinking systems. So we want to get our two kind of working together. Emotions kind of give us the direction, but it's our thinking systems that let us work out what we're going to do about the situation. Now, for this particular pathology, let's go through those emotions, starting with escape. That desire to escape. It's very strong in all of you parents, and that's because the pathology is fundamentally a spousal abuse pathology. So we have one spouse, ex-spouse, parent who's emotionally and psychologically abusing the other ex-spouse and parent, and the targeted parent cannot escape because the bond to the child is holding them in place. If it wasn't child there, they would just, boom, it's a divorce and I'm out of here and I'm never seeing you again. But they share a child. So it's that child's bond, or the parent's bond to that child, that fixes the parent in place for the abuse. Now, the targeted parent can protect themselves and stop the abuse by the divorce. They get a divorce, they separate from that person, so they're no longer getting emotionally, psychologically abused by this person. However, the allied parent then channels or redirects their emotional and psychological abuse of the targeted parent through the child. Okay, and this is classic Mnuchin stuff. Okay, bring up the quotes on this. So they redirect the emotional abuse through the child, weaponizing the child as an instrument of spousal abuse. Okay, and you see, as they do that, though, they are psychologically abusing the child when they make the child a weapon, but they get around the defenses of the targeted parent when they do that. So that puts the targeted parent in a position where, to escape the spousal abuse, the targeted parent must also abandon the child. So that's the first box there, is they can stop the one by the divorce, but when the child is weaponized, they have to stop the child, but then that means abandoning the child, or they have to be abused. And so that's the particularly savage and manipulative nature of this child abuse pathology, or spousal abuse pathology. Is it just locks the parent into place. They're not, because they care about their child, and so they're not going to abandon their child. But the moment they don't abandon the child and the child's weaponized, then the spousal abuse is just coming in and coming in and coming in. So you parents out there have to kind of understand, you're a spousal abuse victim and you're in a spousal abuse brain. You're in a traumatized brain. And because of that, I would not recommend making like major life decisions right now about children and family and what am I going to do. And there'll be time. We'll get this into place. I understand the feelings are authentic, but there's no need to make major life decisions while you're in a traumatized brain. So that's the first piece. Yes, that desire to escape is real. You just want to get away from the spousal abuse. And the child is the instrument of the spousal abuse. So that puts you in a very, very difficult position. So what are you going to do about that? Well, the first thing to do about that is we need to protect the child. Okay, so rather than let the spousal abuse come all the way through the child, we have to back it up and get protections on the child. Because in weaponizing the child there, they've produced such significant pathology that's child abuse. So we need to protect the child from the child abuse, psychological child abuse by the allied parent. So that's step one. So that's what thinking does. We got the emotions say we need to get out of here, we need to escape. Well, thinking figures out how to do that. Well, first step, we're not going to abandon the child, so let's bring the child with us. Let's protect the child. Then after that, thinking goes second step, treatment. We stabilize the family through treatment. So that's what we want to ultimately get to, is right here on this slide, is we want to get to a family situation where it's stabilized through treatment. First, we protect the child and restore the child's healthy development and normal range relationships. And then we got a problematic parent up at the top there. We put a family therapist on that to kind of manage the situation. Contingent visitation schedule would be my recommendation to kind of manage that situation. And notice the child is bonded to both parents, because we want that child's bond to both parents, but one parent's pathological. We're not going to fix that parent. That parent's pathological. But we need to contain that parent and not let that parent weaponize the child into the spousal abuse. And there's ways to do that. Diagnosis guides treatment. So the next component of the emotions are the feeling of surrender. You just want to surrender. It's like all the forces are allied against you. You spent tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and everybody's believing the false allegations. You're wasting money on attorneys and therapists that aren't solving anything, and it's just the barriers are immense. So you're overwhelmed. And bad things are happening. You can't stop them. You can't control them. And nothing you're doing seems to make a difference. So then, given that situation, why don't you just give up? And so then thinking takes over and says, okay, surrender. Why don't we just give up and accept the things we cannot change and change the things we can and understand the difference? That's the serenity prayer out of AA, and it's wonderful to accept the things you cannot change, change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, you don't need to be expending a lot of energy and a lot of focus and a lot of time on areas that are simply unproductive. Okay, shift and spend energy in the productive ways, and then surrender to that which leads and that which takes care of things after that. So the pathology is pattern. And so see the pattern, plan for the pattern, and fix the pattern of the pathology. So that's what thinking is going to suggest. Dr. Childress and thinking are going to suggest that this is a pattern. You see the pattern, you plan for it, you implement your plan to fix the pathology. Now, the pathology is the transgenerational transmission of trauma. And so the child, all children, unite two family heritages, two family lineages within themselves, as well as two family histories of trauma. Okay, so they unite these two histories. And so it is that birthright of them to bring together or unify or integrate those two family histories of good stuff, of love, and also two family histories of trauma. Now, in this situation, we have significant trauma going into the child from one of the parental lineages. And the child's working that through and working that out as part of who they are, as they belong to both sides of that family. And so what we need to do as therapists, what we need to do as parents, is to help that child make a successful resolution of that. So recognizing that the forces that are involved go back generations, and it's just the way of things. There's reasons you chose that person to marry, and the child is going to have to kind of work things through. So surrender to that which leads, and recognize the nature of the pathology. Now, the emotion of release. That's the final one. So you can probably feel it. There's a desire to escape. That's the spousal abuse. I want to escape the abuse and escape all the pain. Then that desire to surrender, it's just overwhelming, and it's just the forces arrayed against you seem impossible to overcome. The final aspect of that emotion is the feeling of, oh, it feels so good just to release all the stresses and all the difficulties that you're having relative to that situation. You want to be released from the abuse. So, what thinking does with the release is you make a plan. You want a treatment plan to fix the problem, and then release. Do what you can do when you can do it, and when you can't move things forward, release into your life. We never abandon a single child to child abuse, and you won't abandon yours. Take effective action and release when no action is available. So one of the another analogies I use with parents sometimes, if your child's sinking in quicksand, it doesn't help for you to jump into the quicksand trying to save them. You stand on the shore, you find a branch, you put the branch in there and you pull them out. But you're solidly on the shore, on solid ground in the situation. So recognize what the pathology is, its pattern, it's coming from generations of stuff. And they're recognize what the patterns are, you plan for them, and then you fix them. Now, as we fix them, though, it is not your obligation to fix them. It is the doctor's obligation. This is spousal abuse using the child as a weapon. That's a DSM-5 diagnosis of 995.82, spouse or partner abuse psychological. Okay, so don't let people tell you this isn't in the DSM-5. Yes, it is right there. And in weaponizing the child, the pathological parent creates such significant pathology in the child that it rises to the level of child psychological abuse. That's DSM-5 995.51, child psychological abuse. All mental health professionals have duty to protect obligations. So if the involved mental health professional is not making an abuse diagnosis, child abuse and spousal abuse, when an abuse diagnosis is warranted, ask them to explain why not. Okay. So you don't have to prove reality to people. You just need the doctors to do their job. They have duty to protect obligations. It is their obligation to accurately diagnose the abuse in the family. Okay. They shouldn't be making guesses. That's their obligation to know what they need to know to accurately diagnose child abuse, or else they can go work with ADHD or something else. But if they're coming to the family courts where there's child abuse and psychological child abuse and delusional thought disorders and stuff, they need to know what they're doing over here. That's their obligation. It's not your obligation to educate them. Okay, so this is an abuse pathology. So it is the job of the doctors to accurately diagnose pathology. It is not the obligation of the patient to explain the pathology to the doctors. All mental health professionals have duty to protect obligations. You just need the doctors to do their job. So, in answer to the question, Dr. Childress, should I give up? My answer is we never abandon a single child to child abuse. Okay, so we're not going to abandon the child. And should you give up? Oh, yeah, in a lot of ways, yes. You surrender to the forces that are beyond you. You do the things you can do when you can do them, and you release to your life when you can't. Don't expend unnecessary energy fighting things that are unproductive. You develop a plan, we execute the plan. Part of that plan will rely on the professional quality of the mental health services you get. If the doctors misdiagnose pathology, children are going to be abused. If the courts don't protect children, and if the courts don't get the proper information from the doctors to protect children, then children will be abused, and there's very little you can do about that. And it's devastating to watch your child be corrupted into this little human that you don't recognize, and that's just a wrong human. And you just have to watch. That's the spousal abuse. You not only Are they attacking you? You have to watch your beloved child become a distorted person. That's spousal abuse. That's the best part of it. And so the mental health professionals really need to recognize the spousal abuse component of this, because it is the pathology. It is fundamentally a spousal abuse pathology that then, in weaponizing the child, it becomes child psychological abuse. Then we protect the child, we fix and we restore and we protect everybody involved in the family. So with that, that's kind of my answer to the situation. We find a different way to solve everything for everybody. And we don't abandon the child to child abuse. And you won't either. We'll find a way. And even if it's sometimes there's nothing that can be done, the child's aging out, the forces arrayed against you are too powerful, and there's nothing you can do. Well, then we recover them as they reach adulthood and early adulthood and stuff. So there's time. You're in a traumatized brain. Don't make any decisions, major life decisions, when you're in a traumatized brain. Get some support. You may want to consider some coaching support just to help get that orientation. Because again, you have to understand you're a spousal abuse victim. We shouldn't be expecting you to come up with all the answers on your own and how to put everything together. You're being abused. You need the support to help you. Should come from the mental health people, can come from a coach, and we'll see about what we can do for getting that to you. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my answer to this particular question and discuss some other aspect of the pathology in some other day. Take care, everybody.